Hi everyone, this is Alexander Lim and welcome to AuthorStory. On this episode, I'll be speaking with Jennifer Cohen, who, with Gina LaRoche, co-authored the book The Seven Laws of Enough: Cultivating a Life of Sustainable Abundance, which you can check out right now by clicking on the Amazon link in the video description below. As for Jennifer, she and Gina are both co-founders of the Seven Stones Leadership Group, which offers organizational consulting and leadership coaching intended to create a just and loving world. So, Jennifer, welcome. It's great to have you with us on Author Story.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
You're welcome. So, Jennifer, what is yours and Gina's inspiration for writing the Seven Laws of Enough?
Well, I'll give you the funny answer. Two
All right.
things
Cool,
first,
cool.
and
All right.
then the real answer. The funny answer is the publisher called us and asked us to, so that's our funny answer.
All right. Okay.
Uh, but really, our inspiration for writing the book is about 15 years of inquiry and experimentation into what became the seven laws,
Mm-hmm.
and many people being inspired by what we were doing and asking us to share it. And we shared it in the form of workshops and conferences and things like that for a long time. And then we decided to share it in this form.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it is sort of like, so was this like a gradual progression? I mean, other than your publicist telling you to write, author this book, was it a general progression, or there was like a single, aha moment and you realized, we got to write this thing?
No, definitely a progression, Alex.
Okay,
Yeah, definitely a progression.
all right, cool. Okay, got that. So let's get into the subject matter itself, or rather the concept behind the book. What is sustainable abundance in the first place?
Sustainable abundance to us, we're defining our own terms here.
Right?
Sustainable means reciprocal, ethical, just. We are really living in unsustainable ways, in
Mm-hmm.
unsustainable times here on planet Earth.
Right.
And for us, a return to that which sustains life and is sustaining of life means that it would be ethical and reciprocal, meaning the giving and receiving would match,
Mm-hmm.
and just.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, abundance is the capacity to remember and notice the incredible bounty that is available, we say equally, to all beings,
Mm-hmm.
and was originally given freely to all of us, regardless of our circumstances or the color of our skin or anything else. Mangoes and bananas and waterfalls and mountains are here for all life, for all time,
All
without
right.
discrimination. So
Right.
that's what those two words mean to us.
Right. Okay. And these are I know they're kind of new concepts. I mean, this concept, the meanings that you stated, they're not really in the common vocabulary. I mean, I'm sure there are people who are listening to this and they're thinking, the world isn't abundant, it doesn't have limitless resources, and what if 8 billion people all lead lives of abundance? Where can all the resources of the earth be found?
That is why we tie sustainable with abundance.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the word abundance in some circles is a word a lot of people use, and they use it to justify the culture of consumption that we're in. I'm trying to live an abundant life. I want to have all these things to feel abundant in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people who are talking about sustainability. They are talking about the finite resources on the planet. They are talking about the ecological credit card that we're living on.
Mm-hmm.
We put those two terms together
Mm-hmm.
because both sides of it matter to us. And you are right. We can't all have bounty in a material sense without having an ethical and reciprocal and just relationship to the resources available on the planet.
All right. You also mentioned the concept of reciprocity, a reciprocal relationship. What does this look like in an abundant society, sustainable abundant society?
It looks like being accountable for that which we're taking. so that we're returning as much as we're taking. You know, many indigenous cultures, the few that are left on planet Earth, lived in a very reciprocal way. So there was not a taking of resources without a returning of resources. And that happened in many different forms. Now people say, okay, but we're not living in an indigenous society anymore and we're not going to go back, and all that is accurate. And some people, some economists are talking about looking at the real cost of goods as opposed to we outsource costs or we hide costs, and don't really look at what it costs to produce a product. And if we started to do that, that would be a step toward the kind of reciprocity that we're talking about, where people actually paid attention to what it took to produce the good and what we'd have to give back to the rivers, to the communities, to balance out that which was taken.
All right. Okay. So can you give a concrete example of what this an example of how this reciprocity would work?
Um, if it looks like I'll give a concrete example. There was a man, he's actually passed away now. His name was Ray Anderson,
Hmm.
and he owned a carpet company.
Hmm.
And he owned the largest carpet manufacturer in the world, I believe,
Hmm.
Anderson Carpets.
Hmm.
And he made a decision before decisions like this were popular.
Hmm.
He made a decision that his company was going to have zero carbon impact on the planet
All right.
and zero what he called plundering, pollution. So the carpet industry is an incredibly toxic industry. And what he did was bring his company to a place where they were no longer polluting the rivers
Hmm.
to make the carpets. They were no longer adding more carbon and more CO2 to the atmosphere than they were putting back. They were neutralizing their impact on the planet. And many companies all over the world, Patagonia, I mean, there's lists of companies that are actually doing the work of people, planet, profits, socially conscious capitalism, really looking at the impact that their company is having on the communities that they're in, where the manufacturing plants are, on the natural resources, et cetera. So those are concrete examples. There's tons of them, actually, thank goodness.
All right. Cool. Okay. So this is happening then. It's not like this is not just like a pipe dream. I mean, people are actually doing this in reality right now.
People are doing it in reality all over the planet. There are many inspiring stories around converting fleets of trucks to electric vehicles, and Ray Anderson and what Patagonia does, and other companies who are cultivating awareness through the way that they're manufacturing their goods, the way that they're treating their employees, et cetera. Yeah, it is happening. And many would say, just to be balanced, many
Hmm.
would say, ironically, here we are, the 7 laws of enough. Many would say we are not doing enough quickly enough
Hmm.
to balance out what needs balancing for life to be sustainable on the planet. And I am not a scientist, and neither is Gina.
Hmm.
And I know the latest climate report just came out and things look fairly dire.
Hmm.
And yes, Alex, it is happening. There are many people waking up and being conscious business leaders all over the globe.
All right. Cool. So great. Fantastic. So
Yeah.
this is definitely a shift from what it was before.
Yeah, I think this movement has been building. And, we would rather talk about, it seems like we being the collective, and the way that we focus our attention collectively seems to be on the bad news.
Hmm.
Um, and there certainly is a fair share of difficult news on planet Earth.
All right.
And there's a lot of good stuff happening. There are a lot of leaders taking a stand for the future of life on Earth, and making products ethically, and treating communities well, and having sustainable supply chains, and not exploiting labor. And then there's plenty of companies who are still doing a lot of damage to the planet.
All right.
So
Okay.
both are true.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So let me go to the other side of the coin, scarcity. I mean, this is the exact opposite of abundance, or at least that's the way it's defined in the common definition. And, given the common definition of scarcity, a lot of people are scared of it. Is there another way of looking at scarcity?
Well, scarcity is really the myth of our time,
Okay.
as distinguished first by Lynn Twist, our mentor and the person who wrote the foreword to our book.
Hmm.
The myth of scarcity is the sea and the water that we're swimming in. And
Hmm.
she distinguished three elements of that myth. There's not enough,
Hmm.
which is the first element. There's not enough to go around.
Hmm.
It's either you or me.
Hmm.
And more is always better,
Hmm.
which you can see in the culture. We want more of everything.
Hmm.
And the third element of the myth is this is just the way that it is.
Hmm.
This is just how it is on planet Earth. There just isn't enough to go around. Having more is always better, and there's nothing we can do about it. And it is true, it is accurate to say that clean water is a finite resource.
Hmm.
It has not been a scarce resource up until potentially recently.
Hmm.
There has been enough clean air, clean water. There is actually still enough food to feed 7 billion souls. And I know the way that we've conducted ourselves and made the food system international may not be sustainable when we get to 9 billion people. But right now, even though 30,000 kids are going to die today of hunger,
Hmm.
it's not because there isn't enough food. That's not the reason. It's because the fundamental mindset of scarcity has built an economic model that says commodities are worthless unless they're scarce.
Hmm.
We drive up value by manufacturing scarcity. We do it with diamonds and we do it with food
Hmm.
and everything in between. But we have to get into reality about what's actually scarce versus finite. There are limitations, but we're manufacturing most of the scarcity on the planet.
Hmm. So this manufacturing of scarcity then, is this, I mean, how does it come about? Is this is like a cultural conversation, or is it something that we just took up as that we imbibed?
Well, again, neither one of us are anthropologists, although I fancy myself maybe an amateur anthropologist at heart.
Okay.
And, you can look back in history.
Hmm.
Some people say that 10,000 years ago, with the development of agriculture
Hmm.
and the potential for human beings to stockpile things
Hmm.
and own things and possess things, that was the beginning of the roots of what became a mindset of scarcity. We had the potential to hoard. We had the potential to have more than our share at any given time. Previous to that,
Hmm.
cultures didn't really store food. They didn't contain anything.
Hmm.
They ate what they killed, so to
Hmm.
speak, and they danced and rested until they ate what they killed again.
Hmm.
And so the simplest answer to your question, is it cultural, is yes.
Hmm.
And it's historical, the origins of scarcity. There's also biological elements to it where the brain is designed fundamentally for safety.
Hmm.
The human brain is designed for survival, and it's designed to look for what's out of the ordinary, what's dangerous, what's not working, what's going to get us, which leads us to look for what's not working, the lack,
Hmm.
the not enoughness.
Right.
But we've then created an entire economic system and social model based on this mindset. And there really are still a few cultures left on the planet, and we talk about a couple of them in the book,
Hmm.
where that mindset of scarcity and the cultural design doesn't have scarcity in it. So yes, it's contextual, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And this feeling of scarcity, I mean, this leads to an essential element of fear as an emotion, as a main driver for existence, does it not?
Yeah, and look at us. You know, look at us. 2018 is a beautiful, unfortunately beautiful example of life on Earth with fear as um, the main driver for our choices. Absolutely. When we think there's not enough, we are an animal, right? First and foremost, we're the human animal.
Right.
We have the human possibility, but when left to our own devices, we're an animal. And if I think there's not going to be enough food for me, I might go and steal yours, Alex.
Right.
And why wouldn't I? If my imperative, my biological imperative is the same as the rest of the animal kingdom, which is to survive, I
Right.
am going to go and take your food if I think I don't have enough.
Right. Okay. So,
Right?
right.
Yeah.
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 So this scarcity then, it's not just historical. I mean, there is a biological base to it. I mean, like you mentioned, our brain is wired for survival, and we are animals. I mean, our intention is to survive. That's our main prerogative.
It is.
Yeah.
And it is. And the thing about this human brain is we don't just have the reptilian brain and the limbic brain. We have this beautiful thing called a neocortex, which in the human brain is more developed than in most other mammals, in all other mammals, in terms of, although there's some debate now, you know, dolphins are very, very intelligent. Elephants are very, very intelligent. And we've had a very grandiose view of our own brains, but we do have a very large neocortex, and we have language, and we have a future. And it doesn't look like at least most other animals have those capabilities. So there's the human animal, and there's also the human potential.
hmm Okay, and the human potential, it occurs to me that's, for lack of a better word, it seems to be based on love.
Yeah.
Caring, sharing, and those kinds of things.
Yes, I would say that too, Alex, that the potential of the human being. I mean, we all have seen corny but poignant and moving stories of human beings joining together in tragedy. I mean, 9/11 in the United States
Mm,
was a horrible moment, but there are unbelievable stories of human beings coming together, selfless acts of courage and taking care of each other. And when people run into burning buildings, and we all have heard these stories, but
mm,
the potential of human beings is enormous. But when we're in terror
mhm.
and when we're fed, there might not be enough for you over and over and over again, and you need to do more to be okay. You need to have more degrees and more square footage and more shoes and more this and more televisions and a bigger screen. And those are the things that are going to make you okay in this life. Nobody ever gets to actually reside in what the potential of being a human is. We're
Right.
always fighting for our survival then.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, people don't necessarily think of, a 96-inch, 100-inch, whatever plasma screen as being a symptom of survival conditioning, but as you point out, that is the case.
None of us need
Yeah.
100, whatever you just said,
Right.
for our happiness, right?
Right.
We
Right.
don't. I mean, there isn't any um, sociological or scientific evidence that once we've reached a certain level, obviously we need food, clothing, shelter. We need community. We need a certain number of things. And after that, there is no correlation between the building of wealth and our actual true happiness, not our titillation, not our excitement, our true contentment with ourselves and life itself.
Right.
There's no correlation.
Right. Okay. So let me get back to the subject of love. So with regards to love,
Yeah.
how important is this where sustainable abundance is concerned?
Well, it's the seventh law. And if Gina were here on the interview with us, she would say, if I had to pick one law, I'd tell you it's the only law.
Mhm.
So it's pretty important. Love is pretty important. And love is even needed for human beings to grow, literally to grow and develop physiologically, neurologically. it's actually built into our nervous system to need love. And I could say a lot more about that, Alex, if you wanted me to geek out on the neuroscience, but you can take it from me
All right, okay.
that we biologically can't thrive without love. It really is the basis of everything and the soil for all the other laws to grow in.
And of course, I mean, well, anyway, about the laws of enough, the seven laws of enough. So how do
Yeah.
these, you already mentioned love, but how do the laws as a whole support sustainable abundance?
Well, what we discovered on our journey of looking at the culture of scarcity that we're in
Mhm,
and asking the question, what is enough? Which is really how all this started.
mhm,
Gina got exposed to a mentor in the world of fundraising, a colleague of Lynn Twist. Lynn Twist is a fundraiser by trade
mhm,
and wrote a book called The Soul of Money and wrote the foreword to our book. And Les Treyban, Lynn's colleague, said, "You're swimming in a sea of scarcity and you don't even know it."
mhm,
And Gina said, "What?" And it began this huge inquiry and a group of colleagues joining together to be in this inquiry. Where is this scarcity that Les is talking about?
mhm,
And once they started to take their blinders off and see the sea of scarcity that we're all swimming in, they asked the question, what is enough? What would it be like to live a life of sustainable abundance or enoughness or sufficiency? There are a lot of terms that we use interchangeably.
mhm,
And as we inquired more and more deeply into this question, Alex, the
mhm,
seven laws bubbled up out of us, is the best way to say it,
mhm,
as signposts along the way that tell us we're in the world of sustainable abundance.
mhm.
One of our mentors said to us, "You treasure what you measure, and you measure what you treasure."
Okay.
And in a culture of scarcity, we measure stuff, we measure achievement, and we measure infinite accumulation of capital on a finite plane. Those are the primary metrics in a culture of scarcity that tell us we're doing well.
Mhm,
And in a culture of sustainable abundance, the metrics that tell us we're doing well are love, like you mentioned, our joy,
mhm,
are the depth with which we're resting, which is law number 5, of being in alignment with the truths of what it means to be an impermanent human being on earth. That's law number 4,
mhm,
of relating to ourselves as belonging here, all of us, regardless of race and gender and immigration status and all the rest of it, religion, sexual orientation, all of it, all the ways we carve up humanity.
mhm,
Everybody belongs here. That's another way we know we're standing in sustainable abundance and declaring and living inside our own enoughness.
mhm.
That's law number 2. And then law number 1 is really telling the stories that are going to give us a life of sustainable abundance instead of telling the stories of scarcity.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, and I mean, telling such stories, they'll change. Like the common story nowadays is scarcity, so changing the stories that we hear to sustainable abundance, that becomes top of mind thing. It'll permeate into us, and will actually, a lot of folks will actually start believing it and start living it.
That's the hope. I mean, what leadership, we run a company that teaches leadership, and leaders fundamentally invent new stories.
Mhm,
Martin Luther King invented a story called The Contents of Our Character versus the Color of Our Skin.
mhm,
And then what leaders do is take a profound stand for that story and that future and invite people into it.
right.
Right? Mandela said truth and reconciliation. Gandhi said India will be free. I mean, we have these incredible models of leaders standing for a world that does not currently exist. It's a fabrication of language. It's an inspired, hopeful story about the future. And this was our version of an inspired and hopeful story about the future. And we call it sustainable abundance, where we get to benefit from the bounty that's here, all of us equally. And we have to restore a right relationship to the planet that we're on and to each other and to the other creatures that are here with us.
All right. Okay. Okay. So yeah, That's a big dream, and definitely that's what a leader would do. I mean, change the entire story.
That's our plan.
Right. Okay, so Jennifer, let me go into a little topic over here. You mentioned that being self-made is a fallacy. So why is this so?
You know, especially in the United States of America,
Hmm.
the dream, right? The American dream
Right.
is the pursuit of individual happiness and the
Hmm.
pursuit of individual success. And we live in the culture. The whole West is based on an individualist point of view.
Hmm.
The East historically has more reverence for the group and the community. In fact, people self sacrifice for the group.
Hmm.
Um, the thing about, you know, we're ultimately after some kind of healthy balance between the two, actually, I think, in sustainable abundance.
Hmm.
But the truth is, none of us do anything alone,
Hmm.
you know, and it was more true 100 years ago when people lived on farms and they were actually close to self-sufficient. They knew how to grow their own food, make their own clothes, manage the heat in their homes, fix everything on their property. There was a sense of uh, self-sufficiency, and yet people were still part of families, and
Hmm.
families took care of each other, and you still need the sun, and you still needed the soil, and you still needed somebody to help you harvest your crop. There's very few people on the planet who are doing anything alone
Hmm.
fundamentally. Even the monks in the caves, somebody else is bringing them their food and
Right.
taking out the buckets of their waste,
Right.
right? You know,
Right.
it doesn't. And even if somebody were literally alone in the woods is alive. The woods is taking care of. There's no way to be on planet Earth and not be connected to the rest of life. That's the way life was designed. There's nothing that's happening completely independent of anything else on this whole planet. So for us, the self-made fallacy is really a fallacy of understanding the way life is designed. And
Hmm.
now, especially in the modern age, I mean, Alex, do you know how to make your own clothes? Do you know how to build your house? I mean, I don't know how to do any of those things,
Hmm. Right. Neither do I.
right?
Right.
Right. So to say I made it on my own and I wrote this book, which of course I didn't even write the book on my own. I wrote it with Gina. But it's like, even if each of us were to say, you know, we did this together, but you know, nobody helped us. It's just not accurate.
Hmm.
So for us, that accuracy helps us with the enoughness, and it helps us remember about our belonging, and it helps us remember the reciprocity too, Alex, right?
Right.
The generosity that's everywhere that allowed us to take the time to write the book versus cook our food. You know, the supermarket cooked our food and we went and got takeout so we could write the book.
Right. Right. All right. So Jennifer, let's say you came across someone who's really struggling with his or her life. Believes
Mm-hmm.
that they'll never get out of the rut of oppression, poverty that they believe they are in,
Mm-hmm.
real or not. They're, like most people, unaware of all the stories and the like which they've imbibed, which create their beliefs. And you
Yep.
only had enough time to tell that person one thing about achieving sustainable abundance. What would be that one thing you would say?
Wow, great question. Can I say two things and not one?
Now, go ahead. Okay, okay, we've got the time. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
It's not your fault. So if really this person is in very difficult circumstances, the first thing I'd say is it's not your fault.
Mhm.
And this moment might just be enough. Take a deep breath, and this moment might just be enough. It doesn't fix those circumstances. But can this moment be a moment of okayness, of enoughness? So if I only had that 1 minute, I think I might say that.
Right, right, okay. Well, great words of wisdom right there. So, Cool, Jennifer. So, in the last minute of this interview or so, are there any final words of wisdom you'd like to share?
Remember that we're being fed a lot of distortions. And the truth is, you really are already enough. And you really, whoever you are, no matter how much real or perceived scarcity you're facing, and there is real scarcity for people. People are hungry. People don't have enough. It isn't just a state of mind.
Mhm.
There are real structural constraints. They're just not there because we did anything wrong. They're there because of a system that's in place.
Mhm.
So for people to really remember what they're responsible for and what they came by honestly.
All right, cool. So, great words of wisdom right there, and yeah, some definitely something to take to heart. So, in closing, then, the book is The Seven Laws of Enough: Cultivating a Life of Sustainable Abundance. The authors are Jennifer Cohen and Gina LaRoche. Jennifer is our guest on this episode, and you can find their book on Amazon. So, Jennifer, this is an interesting conversation. Wish we had more time, but time's up. So, thanks for being an author story. It's been a great chat.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. So everyone, feel free to check out the 7 Laws of Enough, and of course, feel free to subscribe to our channel. So catch you all next Author Story Weekly interview with another fantastic author.